All right, so this is project two for EDSE 495. This is the interdisciplinary project, the one linking career connections or actually other subjects to chosen career opportunities in a field from the CTS cluster. So what I have chosen for my CTS cluster is going to be TMT, so Trades, Manufacturing, and Transportation. The area I'm choosing within this is the construction realm. So under construction, you've got numerous areas you can pursue. What it is, I picked 5 fairly generalized ones that friends of mine have gone that route upon entering construction and eventually moving into a different position or finding a specialty position that they wanted to pursue. So the 5 different areas I have chosen for this project, 5 different careers actually. So the first one would be your general carpenter, so home construction, things like that. The second one would be moving out of the actual hands-on construction field, still directly involved, but we're talking about project management. So after that, the next one I have is associated with the construction industry, a bit more refined. We're going to talk about cabinet making. Going from there, we're looking at now the bigger picture. We are going to talk about home design and what it takes to do that. And from there, the last one I have, we're going to talk about small business. People moving from the construction field and pursuing something more artisan style. In the last few years, the artisan craftsman has really taken off. A lot of small people, niche creators, finding markets, doing quite well in those. So we're going to talk about that and small business. So area or career one, that's going to be the carpenter or house construction. Couple big things in here that are going to be very useful to you. Obviously, mathematics. We're going to see this all throughout the construction cluster here. Any of these jobs I'm going to talk about are most likely going to relate back to mathematics. If you don't have a good, strong foundation with numbers, this career, this field, is going to be very, very difficult for you. So you're going to need a good, strong foundation with numbers to do this. Now, it doesn't have to be super advanced, not calculus 12 and stuff like that. Like it doesn't really, you don't need that big of numbers. But you need a good general basis in trades math. So trades math is actually offered by some schools and post-secondary facilities. But I would say at least a grade 10 math level is going to really help you out with the construction industry. And we're going to use math in a lot of places here. This could be anything from estimation of material quantities, you're working out square footage, calculating how much you need, how much per bundle you get for coverage, so therefore you have a number to work with when you're purchasing bundles. Now, if this is something you're not great at and you either underestimate or greatly overestimate, these can both lead to problems that are not something you want to have, especially if you're doing this for a customer. If you're operating your own business, and you underestimate, you run out of material, you have to make another run, another purchase, have that delivered to your crew or yourself. That's a lot of downtime you're wasting, so that could definitely negatively affect you. Things in construction like building rafters, roofs have pitches, you need to follow specs for those. Same with stairs. Stairs have a certain rise and run you're allowed to have. And there are codes that mandate that. So you need to figure out how to fit this staircase into a certain space, still making it functional, usable, and aesthetically pleasing. So there's a couple examples of mathematics used in general construction. Science. Science is a big one. Science 7 has a unit, structures and forces. So we need to be aware of all of this stuff when we are building things. The way we assemble it, the order in which we put things together, all has a direct effect on how forces are dissipated through a structure. If they're not set up correctly or properly, or are moving the forces in the way they need to, this could lead to failure, and obviously failure is not a good thing in home construction. That could directly come back on you when it comes to deficiencies at the end of the project. An inspector looks at your work, says, this is not up to code. This needs to be redone. Um, you're wasting time doing things not to code or spec. So, in order to save yourself those issues when it comes to delivering a product, you want to make sure this is done correctly in the first time. So, going back is going to directly affect your bottom line, upset a customer. A lot of this is quite important. You don't generally think of science that much when you talk about home construction, but Structures and Forces unit talks about how forces are applied through constructions, how the structures are built to withstand forces. So this integrates quite well. So science and math, I would say, are the two very minimum courses you would want to have or link into this to be able to create a sound project. For the second career for this project, I chose actually project management. So this is what you get into after a career in construction. You've got a good idea how all the processes work. You've run some projects. Now you decide to take the next step and move on up the ladder a bit. Move yourself into project management. There's some definite high school courses that are going to benefit you when making this transition and working in this field of management. You need to be able to run people, to work with groups, have some leadership qualities. And one of the high school courses that I found that helped identify and teach these skills is simply PE. Now, if you are working on a team, say you're playing football. Football needs a quarterback. The quarterback is the guy that runs the show. He calls the plays, all these things. So you're working with a group of people. You are managing and organizing these people in a way to achieve an end result that you want. Football will obviously be a touchdown. Project management, you want to just have the project run smoothly from start to finish. So a lot of these leadership and organizational skills coming from the teachings in the PE curriculum are going to help you when it comes to project management. Once again, I'm going to touch quickly on mathematics, right? You need to be able to estimate hours, what's going to take, how long, even the ground prep and work, how many hours you're going to need certain machines for to book that. You are going to talk about material, you're going to end up talking about placement on the plot, keeping your distances from your property edges as per city codes, things like that. You're going to have to apply math in numerous situations as a project manager. A couple other things you could do, manpower estimations, billing. There are so many opportunities to apply math here, as well as the leadership skills that if you do not have at least a good fundamental understanding of basic mathematics and how to use it in ways to achieve your goals, then you are going to have a difficult time in this field. So we talked about the guy building the house, the carpenter. We talked about the guy who runs the project manager. Now we're going to talk about a guy on the inside of the house. He's your cabinet maker. So his job is during the construction phase, he's going to come in, measure everything up, design some cabinets for the space, build them, then install them. So right there, he has to be able to work with 3D spaces. So your graphic design courses in school, new media, things like that, they are definitely going to help you. He may use things like AutoCAD. Having a good understanding of that is really going to help, and that comes with some of the courses you may find in high school as well. Mathematics, again, we're going to see this in every single one of these careers here. So I'm not going to go too deep into it because I've explained a lot of it in other positions. That overlaps with the requirements for this one. So we are talking about cabinets. Now these cabinets themselves, you need to be accurate. Things need to fit properly. And if they don't, you're going to have issues with, say, binding of drawers, door hinges not working properly, things not working out at the end. If you're a half a millimeter off on one section of cabinets and you install 5 sections of cabinets, you're 5 or 3 millimeters off basically at the end. That may not seem like a big amount, but when you get into the very fine, intricate details of cabinetry, 3 millimeters is a big mistake. So accuracy, attention to detail, and the ability to work with those really fine numbers is a very good skill to have. We're going to relate this back to fine arts too. 3D modeling of ideas. So three-dimensional products is a big thing in art. Yes, most art we see is 2D, but art is obviously three-dimensional as well. When a nice set of cabinets is done and installed properly, it is an art piece in itself and has become quite the market over the last um, numerous years here. What I find in our society is a shift towards visually and aesthetically pleasing things and items. So if you can build cabinets and they're nice and accurate, that's great. But if it's not pleasing to the eye and doesn't satisfy the customer, you're not going to get that contract. You're going to have to go back and redo this work. So you want to be able to do it the first time. So there's a big element of fine arts, design, 3D modeling, everything that goes into building a nice set of cabinets. You wouldn't think of it when you just look at the title cabinet maker, but getting into it, it is quite an art, and those who do it well have mastered all of these techniques, and they are going to be quite successful. All right, career 4 is going to be home designer. Now, this one is not directly related or isn't directly hands-on when it comes to the actual construction of these homes, but this takes place more behind a computer. So we talked about some fields that definitely would benefit you. Science, because you're going to need to know about, again, I keep relating back to Science 7. It's got a unit, structures and forces. This unit is great, talks about application of forces, what works, what doesn't work. Do a lot of hands-on work in science, and you test designs to see what works and what doesn't in a real life scenario. And this could be even something as simple as a spaghetti bridge. We've all seen those, and they hold weight. Generally, the bigger competitions are engineering students in university, but you can scale this down to a smaller level and perform this as really any of the grades that is appropriate for. Um, so that really comes into play for this. If you build a great house, but it can't handle a Canadian snow load, because you're used to building homes in Arizona, let's say, then that's going to be a big issue. So you need to take into account certain factors here in Canada. And one thing a lot of people don't think about is snow load. So all right, there we got math. I mean, that's right there. Calculations. We talk about um, geometry involved in this, so you could relate that back to mathematics as well. Best way for dispersion, 45-degree angles. They help disperse. That's going to give you your pitch you need. Certain homes may require different pitches, different designs. So you have to know how to make all that work in accordance with our code and our building practices here. So there is a lot of stuff that really goes into that. Once again, we're tying into fine arts. It has to be aesthetically pleasing. It's got to look great inside. It's got to look great on the outside. And if it doesn't look great on the outside, unfortunately, it's not going to sell for what it should. If you have been contracted to do this for a home builder and that home does not sell or does not sell well for them, they have to sell them at discounted rates, cutting into profit margins. This directly affects business economics, all sorts of things. You could tie this in, much farther than that. When it comes to this, also though, you need to be aware of percentages. So this is something I learned about recently. When it comes to designing or reworking or renovating a home, certain cities have mandates of what you're allowed to have on each face of each building. Now, when I was having some work done on my home the other year, I learned that you weren't allowed to have more than 15 or 20%, I can't remember the exact number, glass on the sides of your home because a lot of the forces coming down from the roof are directed through the outsides of your home. They focus a lot of glass on the front and on the back, but the sides, they need those sides to deliver all the forces down to the foundation. So they can't really place a whole lot of glass there. So if you were designing a home, you would have to have an appropriate percentage of glass on the side of the home in accordance to the code that you're working with. Now, this could affect aesthetics, it could affect interior design, it could affect lighting on the interior. So, being able to work with this and your numerous other factors together, so your designs on the inside of the home, that could easily relate back to design and construction courses. If you're, say, junior high, you're taking fashion design. Design is a big element there. And like I said earlier, we're finding a lot of aesthetics. Aesthetics are, visually pleasing, things we like. We tend to buy things we find visually pleasing over things that are simply practical. So creating something that's visually pleasing, works well, complies with codes and stuff is the job of the home designer. And that is quite a lot of things to consider. So this can tie back to numerous courses across high school. All right, and the final one, the fifth career option. So we talked about four related around the home construction industry, from the carpenters, designers, project managers, and the cabinet maker. So we are going to step away from that. What we're going to do is home-based business. Say an artisan craftsman. There's been a lot of this popping up in the last 5 years. This has really taken on a resurgence in comparison to years previous. And the area we're going to look at is artisan furniture. I chose this one because we can incorporate a lot of different subjects into this. Obviously, you need to have your familiarity with your tools and materials. Let's even bring some basic biology into this. So how the different materials react, how they're built, how they're made, densities, things like that. If you do not select the correct material for the project you are working with, that project can then be compromised by your selection of wood. If your wood selection is subject to taking a lot of moisture and having expansion, that may not work out well for you when you want something that stays solid. Other things you can look at, art and design, huge factors on this. Like I said, we need aesthetically pleasing stuff. It needs to be functional. Yet you need to be able to mass produce this at a profit ratio big enough to sustain your business. So that's one thing you have to keep in mind as well. We could talk about career and life management, CALM. I'm assuming that's very similar to a course I took in BC called CAP, Career and Personal Planning. What we did is we researched some careers and found out all sorts of information about those and built, models of these careers and businesses. So you need to learn how to run a small business here. So we could even go into one of the clusters, the BIT cluster, we talk about financial management, right? You need to learn how to operate a business. And running your business is a big part of this. If it's a hobby that you don't make any money on, then it has to stay a hobby. It's not going to be successful as a business. Business needs to turn a profit. Nobody creates a business to lose money, obviously. So we need to figure out how to keep our model in the green, how it has to be profitable. Things with this, the art and design, that's a big portion, right? We could even work with the home economics, the upholstering, the textiles you're going to be working with in relation to these furnitures. There is lots of different connections to be made. So, even you go back to Science 70 and structure of forces. You want a chair that supports you, maybe yourself and a child, a couch that takes enough weight for 3 people. So you have to have things designed and engineered in a way that it's safe, aesthetically pleasing, recreatable at a fairly rapid pace. You do not want to have to spend 30 hours per piece and sell it at a very thin profit margin. You want to be able to figure out how to mass produce these pieces so you have 5 hours invested each, and then your profit margin is going to be larger. It's simple business. there are some courses in high school, some various ones that I've taken that related back to business, and you can also extend this to CTS business or BIT. With these 5 different careers that we've looked at now, so I'm going to kind of wrap this up here. If we look at these 5 different careers, all within the construction industry, and I picked very basic and generalized ones that all have a bit of difference, but there are commonalities between all of these. Like I said, if you're basic mathematics, if you don't have that, you're not going anywhere. Your structures and forces, your design, all of these play big factors in this. And if you are not capable or you're not strong in one of these areas, you're going to have to either get stronger or find a partner who complements the things you lack. There are ways of addressing this where you can learn from other people as well. So creating cooperatives, right? Or I mean, you see this in companies all the time. One company does construction, you've got project management companies, and then you have, compliance companies, city compliance companies that help you with all your coding and stuff like that to finish the job. So there are ways of doing this. You can apply this to business models, a lot of different things you can do with that. So there's a bit of a brief look into 5 different careers stemming from the TMT construction field. And that's something I'm a little bit familiar with because I did a bit of construction in high school and took that through my 10, 20, 30 levels. So I figured I'd speak on that because I have a bit of knowledge in those departments, and I can hopefully pass on knowledge to other people in that department.